It you obviously came back last year. You wanted to build up the team. Culture changed. I know it's disappointing not to be in the playoffs. How do you feel about the steps that we're taking, though?
I feel very good about the direction that we're headed. Right. I think more importantly is that there's a plan. I think that's kind of the thing that we want our fans and our players and the people that are associated with us to understand is that we have a clear direction on where we're trying to go and where we're headed as a football team and a department. And I think when you look at watch our team grow over the season, there was some challenges at the start. But again, those are things that we kind of anticipated when you turn over a roster, right? You can go in and say, we're going to go and grab the oldest players out there and grab all the experience and hope that it works, or you can grab the young players, give them a chance to gel. And in their gelling, there was, some opportunities to get better. And, some guys got hurt and some young players had a chance to step up. And we start to see the team turn, right? The guys started believing in one another and they became a team. And I watched an opportunity for some young guys to go from a band of guys playing together, working together to actually becoming a team and hanging out together. And that's what I'm most pleased with and most optimistic about heading into this off season. Speaking with the guys, I told them, I said, this isn't the end of the season. This is the beginning. And this is the beginning of what next year will look like for us as we continue to evaluate our roster and evaluate what we're doing. Had a chance to really get to know the guys and see them and their work ethic and very excited about the path that we're on. And when we choose to put our roster together moving forward, I feel good about that.
Is the defense from where they were the first 5 games to where they finished in the back half of the season one of the good stories about your team this year?
I believe so, and I've always had faith that the defense would turn the corner. Again, it's a matter of trust out there when guys are communicating and got to believe that someone's going to cover you. When you're vacating and just overall having your back. I'm really pleased with the effort. I think I told that to JC yesterday. I just appreciated how he was able to overcome the young players and getting them in place and getting them to line up and play at a high level. I think that's something that people should appreciate. I said from the outset we were always feeling good about the defense, but there are growing pains when the defense has a chance to play together, and you start to see. And if you look at the last third of the season, in the last probably 8 to 10 games of the season with that defense, they start to really figure it out amongst themselves and start to really play at a high level. And the difference between starting the year and finishing is that when we go into next year, there's continuity within our group and within our roster that we did not have coming into this season.
And speaking of continuity, how important is it to get Cody back?
Well, I mean, that's a very important piece of the roster as far as the quarterback position. And I think that's going to be something that we're going to all discuss. And of course, we'd love to have Cody back. But I want to also say that the roster still has work to do. Okay, we still have areas that we need to address. So, we will continue to address those, and we would love for Cody to be a part of that, but not at the sacrifice of continuing to build the roster.
Have you had talks with him?
No, 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 I have not. But I don't talk to them when they're playing. Like I don't need to talk to Cody when he's playing. I can talk to him. I'm sure that we started talking Monday. I would assume that we'd get something done in a short amount of time. I'm not going to put a time limit on it, but I would assume that we can get something done once we begin talking. But as far as the conversation, no, I didn't want to bother him. He was.
He talked about it here this afternoon.
He did talk about what? Have we talked?
No, he said you hadn't.
Oh yeah. Oh, so that was a trick question you tried to get.
He said he'd like to play here. Is basically what he said.
And you know what? We would love for him to play here. I want to make something clear. Cody Fajardo is exactly what we had talked about when we made the trade for him. Like this is the player that we said that could provide stability and all this stuff. Did we know where this was going to take us? No, we did not know. He came in to be, support the backup to Tre, and if ever called upon, we knew he would be ready to go. Does he want to be here? I think that's a big positive for us because a lot of players would say in the past, "Don't come here." So I think that's a big bonus for us, and I think once Cody and I have a chance to talk and have a conversation, and really start really honing in on his future, I don't see any reason why we can't make that happen.
What's the future hold for Tre Ford?
I think in a situation like that, obviously, that's going to be a big discussion for us. Like, you guys know me, like, I'm not one to mince words and I'm not one to make things up. I think this is one of those cases where we really have to evaluate whether or not the fit is right for him here, right? Or maybe a fresh start for him is big, right? He and I had a great conversation this afternoon. But as far as what we're doing and willing to do, I mean, there's opportunity for us to have a chance to talk with him again, talk with his agent, and really just kind of digest the entire season and see. And then again, we want to do right by all of our players, and we want to make certain that our players are in a position where they are respected, regardless of what the outcome is. These decisions are never personal. These decisions are about football, and I think our fans have come to appreciate the fact that everything that we're doing here is with the intent of winning and putting together the kind of product that they expect us to place on the field that gives us a chance to compete for championships. And sometimes in those cases, there are unpopular decisions that are made, and there are popular ones. In this case, I know how he's beloved, but we have to look at the overall roster and how it makes us better. And considering we're talking about Cody on one hand and keeping him and all this other stuff, you guys know that something has to give. So I don't want to make this into a him versus him or me versus him or us versus him. This is the reality of the football business once a season has been played, that we look at it and say, how do we assess our roster and continue to build, but be able to get this Cody Fajardo deal done, but also handle something as delicate as the Tre Ford situation.
How tough is it to find quarterbacks today?
I think, like most, you give guys opportunities to play and you give them the chance to get out there. Most times you don't know what you have in quarterback until he gets the opportunity to play, right? And I think that's kind of league-wide. That's why you see, a lot of quarterbacks, they play long into their mid to late 30s because, again, it comes from coaches trusting also the veteran players. And sometimes guys don't get an opportunity to play unless someone gets nicked up. How hard it is, I mean, again, I can't put it on a scale because I think that there's some young guys out there, when given an opportunity, they're going to play well. Now, to what level? You got to protect them. You got to get them some playmakers. They got a lot of things have to fall into place for those guys. But I think that, in our situation, the veteran quarterbacks who have played tend to always go in and think the game is a little slower for them with respect to going out and performing at a high level than it is for some younger guys who go out there and things are moving a little faster and they need a little bit more time. But my hope is that with our quarterback situation, as it moves forward, it's a group that we can win with regardless of who's in the game.
Coach, when you look at some of the big name signings on that defensive line this past, sorry, Ed, old habits die hard.
I was like, wow.
I wouldn't have caught it too, honestly. But anyway, you look at some of those big signings like Brinkman, Seresna, Smith, Barlow. Maybe underwhelming, underperformed would be a way you'd characterize them this season. What does the future look like for that front four, and how do you assess some of the guys I just mentioned with their price tags?
I would say that when you look at their start of the year, there was a lot of opportunities for the defense where everyone's trying to figure themselves out, right? And you have to build with foundational players, and you have to go out to put those guys out there. But I think when you look at it, was there continuity in what we were doing? Was there trust in the back end that allowed the back end and the front end to actually work in unison? I don't think that opportunity was there as much as it was as we got to the second third of the season. As far as those guys are concerned, I still believe in all those guys, and I believe those guys, what they didn't do statistically on the field, you'd be surprised at the things that they did for us inside the building and what we were trying to build. We were trying to shake this narrative that had been created here, this dark cloud that was over this organization of poor behavior, and those guys were able to maintain that, especially during that stretch of where we struggled in the first third of the season. And we said this from the outset, you're going to be able to overcome those things based on the kind of character you have in your room. And those guys were able to get us through that. And that is partly why we were able to turn it and become an exciting team, and a team that kind of gave the city and gave us some hope that we could actually, kick the door in and compete for the postseason. Now, we fell short, but never discount the value of these players when they're off the field. And I wouldn't trade those guys, regardless of their statistics, for any of those guys who are here for the sake of knowing that those guys will be available to us. So sometimes there's just more to the people than just what their statistics are able to show.
Was there a player you signed? Like, obviously, every player you sign, you have belief in. But was there one guy, or a couple guys who you kind of thought of as diamonds in the rough that didn't come in with much fanfare, started on the practice squad, but you knew, like, once they were going to get in and show everyone what they could do, they would pop, and then they did that?
I think collectively, as we were discussing, there's several guys. I'll be honest with you guys. Like he may not. This player didn't start on the practice roster. Kenny Logan is one of those players that in camp he was always in a discussion of on the bubble, and it was his versatility and obviously the person that he is that kind of saved him at times. Because when you go from 85 to 75, young players' names are always mentioned, and watching him play and grow and develop, and then again, I'm still one of those guys that felt like, man, he could have also been our Rookie of the Year nominee, just based on his impact and stuff. Brock Mogensen's another one that you look at when he comes in and no fanfare, but comes in and does his job, right? But you have to give the coaches credit for getting these young guys ready, and I want to make sure I shift this focus towards them as well, because they're able to take the young guys. Most coaches don't like young players. I've been places where they just complain, and now they're enjoying them. But they in the past, they're always whining about young players. And this staff has embraced young players, and not only has embraced them, but have gotten them ready. And whenever their number was called, those guys were out there. Again, Joel's another one. DeBlanco, he wasn't a rookie, but he didn't play last year as well. He was someone we were very interested in seeing. And they created packages for him. And then a couple of injuries, he's out there playing. And then all of a sudden you get to see why this team drafted him where they drafted him, right? Like, I'm very proud of the entire roster, all those young players that I didn't mention. J.J. Ross is another one. Just sat there patiently waiting and come in. And we were wondering about the boundary corner, and he solidified that. Like, there's plenty of guys that we can walk through and just be excited about. That's why, for myself, I'm fired up about the beginning of this offseason and getting started and on what we're going to look like next year. Because, I mean, guys, like, let's be honest with ourselves, right? Like, this is, as I see it, we have a plan on what we're doing, right? There's no questions as to coaches coming back and all these different things. Now it's just the quarterback situation, and then how do we make football decisions to make us better. And to me, that's a simple formula to at least giving us a chance to have some level of success, and some success that we haven't had around here in a while. And I feel good about that, regardless of not making it. Of course, the competitor wants to make it. Of course, I'm disappointed that we are not in. That's a competitor. But having done this and been around this as long as I have, I also understand there's a process to this. And the process to this is build the character in your room and your organization first. And those of you who have been around our team and have had a chance to really be around the group of young men and the young ladies that we have working in other aspects, you know that we're a completely different department. We're a completely different team than we were last year. And for that reason is how I know in my gut that next year is going to be a really good year for us. And I was talking to the players saying, don't set the playoffs as next year's goal is the playoffs. Because that's a goal that you're looking to go in and lose in it. Set your sights on competing for the championship. Because we already know you can't compete for the championship if you're not in the playoffs. So the playoffs just so happen to be a part of going on the way. But set your minds on competing for the championship. Because you've shown that in any particular case, depending on how this thing shakes down, one of the two teams that you've beaten is going to win the championship. Outside of Hamilton and BC, the two teams that we didn't beat, there's a great chance that someone that you've beaten is going to win the championship, and you're going to say, how is that different than what we are?
But you became a team this year. Listening to Cody, he talked for himself and said what a great organization, what a great dressing room it was, and what a great dressing room it became. And he did say we could do with a few more leaders, but we're coming. And he said it's as nice an experience as he's had in a dressing room than he had this year.
And again, I'll piggyback on that. Again, it goes back to the character, and he's a big part of that, right? Again, it's the character of the people that we have in the room that are able to do those things when you're facing adversity. And when you talk about leaders, remember, leadership is twofold, right? Coaches select leaders, and then the players select leaders. And when the players select their leaders, that's when you know you're really going somewhere. The coaches can select people that they want to talk to. And same thing with myself. I got a group of guys that I talk to in case there's things that need to be fixed. But the players are the one who truly select their leaders and who they want to follow. And it's all based on how they practice, how they play, how they conduct themselves, and who they respect. And that part there that Cody speaks of, I agree with. But remember, like, this is a young team. They're going to find the leaders because it's going to happen. And it'll happen in training camp when all of a sudden you start hearing the voices. I heard a few voices toward the end here, some players, and I won't mention their names. But when training camp comes, we'll see who the players are following.
Mark's been sought after for the last few years as a head coach. After 1 year as a head coach, he seems to be what everybody expected he was going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. The players play hard for him. You see he's passionate, and he'll tell you, he gets a bit fiery, but that's all the stuff that we knew that we were getting with him. Those are the things that he brings to the table, and I think he's done an excellent job. I think the players recognize that he's going to give them, he's going to love them, but he's also going to coach them hard. And they're willing to play hard for him. I mean, I have a notebook full of notes from players that I've already had a chance to speak with when I've asked them about Mark specifically, and it's glowing reviews on him and their passion for playing hard for him. And that's what you want, right? That is exactly what you want, right? So when I look at it and I talk to Mark every day, he understands the undertaking that we have here. He understands the responsibility that we have here in Edmonton. And that's why I look and I say, guys, there's going to be tough decisions and there's going to be a lot of that stuff, but it's really with the intent of building a winner here, right? There's no personal feelings, there's no hard feelings. It's how do we get better, right? And, there's going to be some players that love him and want to play here for him, but we're going to have to discuss whether or not, we need to get better. But to answer your question, I think he's done a fantastic job. And, the next phase of his, growth as a head coach, if you want to call it, is now that you've built this bond with these players, is being able to now decide between who stays and who goes and not have it feel like it's a personal thing. Because I know he loves the players. I know he cares about these players. I know that, just dealing with them every day. But the two can be separated because the ultimate responsibility that we have here is to compete to, get to championships. So sometimes you keep guys, and sometimes, you have to play against those guys next year.
You talked about some of the changes that you still are working on to build. What are the things that you're looking at on the offseason?
You're trying to give away my secrets. Well, obviously, we want to make sure that we're able to win a few more games than we did this year, and some little more experience in some areas that I won't go into specifics. But I think when we hit the off season, we have an idea of what we want to do and areas that we want to improve in, and the reality is we have to ask the question. Is that coming from some of the young players that we have that have played a few games for us, or do we have to go out and find that in free agency? That's going to be the big question for us. But, as far as where, I don't want to tip my hand on that, as you guys know. But in due time, you'll find out.
One last one for me, actually. Sorry. Brock was the guy who was playing the MAC, down at the end of the season here. Coach Kilam's really high on him. Joel obviously had great success at the Will. Nick can kind of play both. What does the future look like for Nyles?
Well, I guess we will see, right? I guess we will see. The realities of that is that, you guys know how I feel about the linebacker position, right? I look at the linebacker position and I've told our guys this, like, you guys know how I am. Like, I look at linebackers, you can replace them. I've always felt that way. And it's nothing personal, again, nothing personal. And wherever this goes or however you try to make it, it's not anything against him. But we have to evaluate our roster to how we get better. And if is there a place where all four can be on the team? I'm sure there possibly could be. At the expense of getting better, I can't see that. Okay, I can't see that. I can't see us holding on to any player if it meant that we're not getting better. Right? We're going to get better. That's where we're at. We're going to get better. We have to get better, and we have a cap, And again, this is what it is. And I think that with Mogensen and Joel and Nick, and I think Nyles, I think those are four excellent linebackers. But for areas that we need to improve, salary-wise, you kind of have to really look and assess the overall roster to see how can we make it work. And if we can make it work, then great. But if we can't, we're going to do what's best for this club and how we can get better as a football team.
I assume all the work starts for you, not that you weren't busy during the season, but the heavy work starts for you now with interviews, and then kind of where do you go from there as the GM in the offseason?
Well, we're going to finish up with the player debriefs, and then we're going to debrief with the coaches and talk about the good, the bad, and the challenges. And we have to discuss, how can we improve? Where? Not only from a personnel standpoint, but from what we're asking the players to do, right? And I think that's huge. And then from there, Mark and I will have a chance to kind of discuss coaching staff. We'll have a chance to discuss players. There's some short-term players decisions that we have to make because we'd like to get some, we'd like to see if some guys want to extend and be a part of this. And then there's the long-range look as far as evaluating the rest of the league, potential free agents and stuff. So when you ask me how that looks, it's going to be a slow, methodical process, but very detailed in the process of how we're, handling it and what we're doing, because I don't want to start next season, looking around and see 35, 40 new faces, right? Not next year, but I do want to look around and see that the roster that we put together is going to have the kind of impact that we put a lot of time in from this offseason, knowing that it's going to help us be a better football team, one that we can feel good about, one our fans can feel good about, and more importantly, one that we feel that can compete to compete for a championship.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it, Ed.
Ed.